All right, guys, so today we're going to be talking about the importance of the elbow position when you are attacking various positions. So I tend to think that especially when you're attacking limbs or seeking to establish control, one of the more important things that people don't consider too often is the position of their elbows. So let's talk real quick about the idea of super defensive jiu-jitsu. If you can imagine when your training partners or you yourself, if you've ever been put in a really bad position and you don't want to give up submission, what is one of the first things people do is they start trying to clam up like this, okay? So even Brett Mickelson has a whole hawking idea where the elbows are always tight, and one of the focal points that I've understood is the idea of learning how to maintain that integrity of the elbow position when you're actually working your defense, okay? So turning it back around to some of the offense, what you want to consider is as you are attacking somebody is always where the position of the elbows are in space. So a couple of quick ways that we can think about that here is from the closed guard position, right? So if I have Cameron here in the closed guard position, I'm always going to be mindful first of controlling the position. So I've got my legs wrapped around my partner. I'm trying to keep him from being able to move too much. Once I have adequate control, I want to start considering my attacks. So when you consider attacks, first thing is generally to establish connection and try to off balance, okay? So generally speaking, I like to go in for a cross sleeve grip. And then what I need to start doing is start to off balance with my partner here. Now there's three directions of off balancing the closed guard. One, it's either forward in that knee line. Two, it's gonna be in this diagonal here. Or three, it's gonna be in that diagonal here. Because he's facing me, oftentimes most of our power is gonna come from our ability to off balance forward. So I use my legs almost like a reverse sit-up to get him coming forward. So once I can establish connection, try to off balance, I want to figure out where the momentum is. And the momentum is going to be determined a lot of times by the ability to bring the elbow to and from. So this is kind of a little bit of a diagonal push and pull here. But if I feel my partner's elbow coming back behind my hips, then what I use that momentum to start attacking a sit-up sweep here, okay? If I start pulling and I feel that elbow coming across my body, then we can go into that side scissor where now I have some back exposure. We can start attacking from that spot. If the elbow is kind of neither here nor there, but instead it's right here on my belt where it's hard for me to get a 2-on-1 and pull across, but then I can't move my elbow across this way, then we can start to consider making a cross collar grip, folding our partner over that elbow, and then starting to work here in the armbar position here. Oftentimes your partner can get very defensive. Elbows are in a no man's land for me in terms of attacking. They're not past my belt. They're not past my belt above my hip here or my chest. They're not behind my belt in an angle that's going to give me a sit-up sweep here. Here he's being really defensive, so the next thing I have to consider is how I start to isolate that elbow here, okay? So now in this situation, once I use my hands to kind of come across, I shimmy my hips, now we can start isolating that elbow a little bit more where I can bring it across my body here. So when we think about some of the defensive aspects here, when my partner's elbows are in situations like this where it's kind of hard for me to attack, I always have to figure out how I can use my hips, not my hands, how I can use my hips to start isolating those elbows a little bit more. If he's got good, strong connection, I have to figure out ways to disconnect either there or here so that now I can separate the elbows from his body. So again, when my partner's elbows are in tucked towards his body, it makes it very difficult for me to attack. If I feel that momentum going outward, I attack that way as we just saw. Otherwise, I have to consider how to bring my partner's elbows away from his body here, okay? So once I start getting the elbow out and separated, this is where I'm gonna start setting up a lot of my attacks here, okay? We can also compare this to the mount position, and in my eyes, the mount position is very similar to the guard position. I call it the closed guard, but just inverted, right? So I'm essentially in a closed guard position here. My partner's elbows are nice and tight here. There's gonna be no way for me to start attacking. So the first thing after I have control of the partner, my partner, is I wanna start to be able to figure out a way to isolate and remove the elbows from his body. So in the mount situation here, I'm looking to get the elbow separated where I can start working my way underneath. I'm looking to get his arm isolated where the elbow starts to come above the shoulder line. So an example of that is if I use that same maneuver where I threaten the key lock, I can now use this arm to come underhook where we have the key lock here, or if he turns downward, I can start bringing the arm above his head. Or other situations where maybe he tries to bridge and the arm comes across my midline here, where now we can start attacking arm bars and back exposure. okay? Similarly, one last one here in side control position. If my partner has his elbows super tight, I want to consider how I can start isolating these elbows. I usually call the near side elbow, this is the escape elbow, this is the submission elbow. I have to control this elbow to limit my partner's ability to escape, and I have to control this elbow in order to attack. This is my priority, so oftentimes what you'll see is people switch their hips to isolate that elbow. Once we start doing that, we can start wedging ourselves underneath this elbow, where we can start attacking our attacks and our advances into better positions. So again, when I have a situation like this, my goal is to control and isolate both elbows. If my partner's elbow is in here, it's gonna affect his ability to escape positively. I don't want this elbow tight to his chest. This is where a lot of his good frames are gonna come from. So I have to find ways to remove that elbow from his body, where now I can start attacking. There are a few submissions you can do to this near elbow, but they're few and far between, and in my opinion, they're a little bit too high risk, high reward. The next thing is to start isolating this elbow. Oftentimes when your partner makes the mistake of pushing instead of framing, they isolate it themselves, where now you can start attacking much easier. If they're being a little bit more of a pain, keeping that elbow tight, then what I want to consider is my ability to get underneath the elbow, where now I can start to use my chest to pry that arm off, and we can start attacking. Sometimes too, you can use the thumb and the collar to start baiting and attacking the neck, and then once he starts to defend with that arm, now he starts to bring that elbow above his body, and it's similar to the mount position. What we're looking for is the elbows to be away from the body and above the shoulder. So I hope this helps. If you liked it, give me a subscription, subscribe, like it, leave me a comment. Again, the key thing with today's video is to understand the elbow position of your opponent, how to control them, how to isolate them, so that you can start attacking much more efficiently. Cool? Awesome.